friends and fans. I'm super excited to welcome all my pals back to the annual Blackwood Winter Getaway.
There are a few things I need to make sure you understand.
I'm going to give you 10 seconds.
No, please! No!
It means so much to me that we're all still here together.
The past is beyond our control. You have to accept this in order to move forward.
It was just a prank, man.
Now what gives you the right to play God? Why are you doing this? Maybe you don't like them as much as you pretend.
I don't
Sam. Looking for me?
Hey everyone, it's Soul here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. 2 weeks ago, the Until Dawn remake was released, and it's not being that well received. The sales as a whole across all platforms have been pretty low, and I think it's safe to say that this game is getting a lot of mixed reactions from longtime fans. While the graphics, I personally think, have some really nice changes to them, especially in relation to the characters' facial expressions, a lot of the other changes and additions weren't exactly a raging success. Those of you that have seen my videos before probably know by now, but I love supermassive games, and in particular, I adore Until Dawn. So I have a lot of thoughts about this remake. So let's dive in and dissect the entirety of the remake for Until Dawn and answer the two questions of was it good and is it worth it? As always, please remember to hit that like button, click subscribe to see more videos from me, and leave a comment down below. Here is your one and only warning, that this video contains spoilers. Alright, read those journals, lace up those snow boots, and let's sprint into it. Until Dawn first came out back in 2015, and it found immediate success on YouTube. A lot of the YouTube gamers at the time were playing this game, and fans were really invested in seeing which of their YouTubers made the right decisions and seeing people's general reactions to all of the cheesy, cliche horror elements that this game has to offer. Not to mention, seeing the eventual reaction to the twist with the Wendigos. With the game's massive success online, it was only a matter of time before we eventually got either a sequel and/or a remake. And 9 years later, the remake has finally been released. With the information for the remake often getting confused with the information for the upcoming movie, the original rumors and information that I personally heard was always a bit spotty and confusing. One thing that was always made certain, however, was the fact that the remake would use the Unreal Engine 5 and would have a stronger focus on the animations and updating the graphics. While the graphics were state-of-the-art back in 2015, there are definitely some moments in the original where the facial animations were not the most natural looking. However, despite the awkward smiles, the original story itself proved to be near perfection. So when news got out online that they were maybe recording new scenes for the game and were adding in scenes from the vault, I did start to get just a little bit concerned that they might alter too much of the original story that I already thought was pretty close to perfection. However, after seeing snippets that were showcased in the trailer of these new scenes and hearing that we did get one of the main cast members to actually come back and film brand new scenes, I started to get really excited thinking that maybe this is it, maybe this is what they need to finally perfect this entire story, just work out those last few remaining issues and finalize this amazing game. And, well, sadly, it did not get there. Before I go any further critiquing and analyzing the game and all of the changes they made, I want to first state that I am, at the end of the day, insanely happy that with this remake, so many people are getting to experience this game for the first time. I just love seeing one of my all-time favorite games get all of the hype and exposure once more. It's really nice to see the fandom grow and explode like this. So to anyone who is just finding this game, welcome to the fandom. I hope you got some good scares and had a fun time playing this game. If you want to go see all my previous thoughts and feelings on the original story, be sure to go check out my video on it, as I will not be discussing too much of the story outside of the changes that they made from the original to this remake. so in many ways this is kind of a part 2 to my previous analysis. But I hope you stick around in this fandom, because I think Supermassive and this structure that they have for Until Dawn is really exciting stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoy it and stick around for more. Now, as I said in my introduction, I personally like the changes to the graphics. I think the most noticeable changes has to be the facial expressions, with Dr. Hill getting some insanely good facial expressions now, whereas before he often looked a little bit, well,
Fucked up.
All of the characters have actual texture to their skin, which is really nice to see, whereas in the original, they kind of appear almost wax figure-y. Despite the game being state-of-the-art back then, it has not really aged that well, so it's really nice to see all of the characters' facial animations and graphics being improved in this remake. The overall movement, I think, has also been polished up really nicely to make the sort of spinning and moving of the arms while they talk look a bit more natural. It's not as drastic of an improvement as the facial animations, but there definitely seems to have been some sort of fine-tuning to their motions. I also really like the changes that they made to the first setting of the forest when we arrive as Sam. Seeing the warm sunlight as the sun is setting with Sam arriving at the forest not only made a lot more sense that they are arriving during the daytime instead of in the pitch black darkness that we saw in the original, but it just made for this really nice, warm, welcoming start for a game that will soon turn very dark and tense. Another thing that I really liked was how they kept majority of the original lines. I don't know why, I was just a little bit worried that they might try and take the game to a more serious and realistic level, that they might pull out some of the jokes and cheesier elements from the game. However, to my greatest joy, they kept all of the wacky lines that make Until Dawn such a memorable and fun game. And most importantly, they left in this icon.
Jesus, hot sauce Christmas cake. This is fucking unbelievable.
One major change that I personally really liked and I thought was nicely done was all of the changes to the totems that they made and the addition of a brand new totem pole titled Hunger. But more on that totem pole a little bit later on when we discuss Hannah. The new mechanic for being able to actually view the visions in the totems, I originally didn't like. However, by the third totem that I found in the game, I will admit I started to find it really enjoyable. Having to sort of twist and turn and find the totem until you get the perfect spot to access the vision, I thought it was a fun way to sort of shake things up from the original. Not to mention the fact that they changed the location of almost every single totem, creating new corners of the map to hide these totems in. It allowed for a sort of fresh look for players of the game who, myself and many others of you, know where most of these totems are hidden. It gave us a sort of fresh experience in a game that we are all so familiar with. Going off the game's original attention to the snowy setting, we get a brand new sort of graphic and animation of the snow piling up around the characters' feet as they trudge through the forest trails. This is something that I just really enjoyed seeing. I don't know why. Every time I noticed it on screen, it just put a smile on my face. I don't know why, it just made me really happy, and the crunching sound as they walk across the snow is still amazing, just like it was in the original. The overall graphics of the setting as well look amazing in this game, and I loved seeing the sort of viewpoint moments when we're on these trails and we get to look out into the cliffs and the mountainside. But while I was fairly pleased with most of the initial and general changes to the beginning of this game, there was one major negative that grew to aggravate me more and more as the game progressed, and that was the awful music. And no, I'm not even talking about how they removed the iconic Oh Death intro song, because I actually didn't mind the brand new intro. I thought it was actually pretty good. It was a nice surprise for fans that have been playing this game for years, and it features the best character in the entire game, Wolfie.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wolfie. Wolfie. Aww. Oh, Wolfie buddy. So extra bonus points for this brand new intro. So the issue I have is with the horrible background music. The music, for starters, was hardly there, with much of the game occurring in silence. I had originally started playing this game in streamer mode because I was on my live streams, but I very quickly switched back to the regular mode, and then I was immensely disappointed to find that the original mode didn't have music either. I tried to bite my tongue for a little bit in the beginning of the game, and I kind of wanted to hold out until the second half where it should start to kick in. Music should get a bit more spooky and tense as Emily is in the mines, Mike is sort of having his action hero moment chasing after Jess. But that didn't happen, and it was bad. The few times the music did get tense, it would suddenly stop instead of keep that energy and sound going to keep us in that state of tension and fear. Other times in the game, when the music would kick in and have a sort of creepy sound to instill some amount of drama or fear for a brief second, whatever was happening on screen wasn't exactly in time with the sound. It almost felt delayed or as if it missed its cue. But by far, the worst example of them failing at having the music create tension, fear, and dramatic effect for the players has to be when the Wendigo finally appears on screen in full for the first time in the entire game.
No, stay away!
Use these and get the hell out of here now!
Where is the dramatic pull as this mysterious creature drops down from the ceiling? This is a huge moment in the game. I don't think they realize or remember how big of a moment this is for first-time players. This is the first time the players are being exposed to the idea and realization that, hey, it's no psychopath and it's not this stranger. It's instead this creepy, crawly, lanky monster, so now you have to run for your life. Just as a comparison, take a look at the original audio here.
No, stay away!
Use these! Get the hell out of here! Now!
Not only is the music a lot louder in the original game than the remake, but the low droning sound and the overall lower pitch creates a lot more of an ominous feeling and dramatic feeling to the events going on screen than the more timid and reserved audio that is occurring in the remake. Sadly, this more reserved, laid back, and almost relaxed feeling to the overall music is an issue that occurs throughout the entirety of this game. It's not just this one moment, it happened in almost every single dramatic moment where they would pull back right as things are going crazy. Now, I want to be very clear here. I am by no means saying that they had to have the exact same music in the remake. I understand that there's probably a lot of licensing issues behind the scenes that they just couldn't get renewed, and it's not always a possibility to have the exact same songs again. So while I commend them for trying to create a brand new soundtrack, at the end of the day, I don't think it did its job well. Something that the original game did insanely well was the fact that the music was just as over the top as the cliche and cheesy events going on screen. The original game is so over the top and leans into these sort of horror elements, and the music mirrored that. When Mike was chasing after Jess, the strings were going absolutely crazy with tension, and it mirrored the overall feel that this game creates that is both cheesy, tense, and terrifying. But with the new music for this remake, I didn't get any of that over-the-top dramatic tension, urgency, and cheesiness that the visuals were portraying on screen from the music that should be complementing it, and I just don't think it turned out good in the end. So I just really didn't like the end result that we got with the brand new soundtrack to this game. Moving on from the audio issues, the game itself was insanely glitchy. I had multiple times that the game just sort of crashed on me. Now, for reference, I was playing the game within the first week of the game's release, and while I know that glitches and issues are to somewhat be expected nowadays whenever a game is released, I can't help but feel like it didn't get resolved fast enough, as I was still having the game crash on me nearly a week after its release. And the sad reality is, the game has had 9 years to prepare for its release here, and for the price that you buy it at, it's just not a good look to have all of these tech issues for the company. For all companies in part of this game, Supermassive, even though they aren't directly part of the development phase, is still getting a poor reflection because of this remake. Ballistic Moon, who is responsible for the development of this remake, is putting out a pretty bad representation of what kind of work they do here. So it's not a good look for any of them. With the general changes out of the way, the remake gave us a few more scenes and has subsequently changed a handful of characters, which resolved some of the issues and expanded upon some characters' personalities, but in other cases, did not resolve every single issue that the characters had in the original game.
Are we going crazy down here? What is going on? You can't let me die. God, no!
By far, the most important scene that I think they added into the entire game has to be the new scene with Ashley not opening the door for Chris in Chapter 8. Now, in order to get this scene, you have to have Chris shoot the gun loaded with blanks at Ashley in Chapter 6. She will then not give Chris a kiss before he leaves, heading out to search for Josh by the shed. Once Chris successfully sprints back to the house, don't miss any of these quick times here, this brand new scene will occur.
Ash! Let me in quick! Ash! Oh my... Oh, Jesus Christ.
In the original game, Ashley was seen standing at the door, staring down Chris and not opening it, causing him to be killed by the Wendigo right in front of her. Now, with this being the case in the original game, there was always this debate on whether Ashley was acting out of revenge for Chris shooting her earlier, or if she was just simply in shock. And I won't lie to you guys, I was kind of more in the revenge camp earlier because, I mean, the facial expression just kind of doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't read as shock to me in this moment. However, with this remake, seeing Ashley stumble around at the base of the staircase, it's clear that she is very much in shock with the overall night's events, causing her to not get to the door in time to let Chris in. So despite the fact that Ashley is still not the nicest person at times, with her honesty meter seeming to go up when she blames Hannah for, well, dying a year ago.
It was a dumb prank, Chris, and maybe we shouldn't have done it, but it's not like I personally made her run into the woods.
Kind of splitting hairs a little.
Look, she chose to do that. It's not our fault she did that.
It has now been confirmed that Ashley is not acting out of revenge at all. So we can now safely end the 9-year-long debate and discussion on this topic. As for the rest of Ashley's story, everything else basically stays the same. I personally still think she's a bit annoying as you play throughout this game, and she's still kind of my least favorite character out of the group, and I know some people absolutely love Ashley, but I still don't really like her.
No, they're gone!
Deep breaths, Josh.
Oh, not so tight! Okay? Not so tight, okay.
Another major addition and change for one of the characters is all of the additions that are made to Josh's mental health. Now, while it was always obvious that Josh had suffered severely after the loss of his sisters, it has been expanded upon, with his history of mental health being described in some diary entries from Hannah, indicating that Josh had actually spent some time at a mental hospital not too long ago before his sisters disappeared. When playing as Sam in Chapter 7, you can actually find some more documentation that shows that Josh has been jumping from medication to medication under the doctor's supervision for the past couple of years. This is not something recent that has just been brought on by the events of the year before. But the changes and additions to Josh's character don't just stop there, because we also get a brand new ending for Josh. Now, originally, Josh had two different endings. He could get killed by the Wendigo version of Hannah in this moment, or if you found Hannah's diary earlier when playing as Sam and Mike, Josh wouldn't get killed in this moment as he realizes that the Wendigo is Hannah, but he will instead be turned into a Wendigo himself as he is left behind down in these caves after being dragged away by the Wendigo. While these endings still remain in the game, there is a brand new one that appears to have Josh survive, and for him to truly survive at that, not just to survive and get turned into a Wendigo later on. As we see lights from the presumed officer's flashlights flickering across the walls of the cave, we see Josh look up and then we cut to black. Now, I think the idea is that Josh presumably lives. He's presumably found by these officers and will have to go on living his life with the consequences of his own actions. But I will say, as far as new scenes, I can't help but wish that we got just a little bit more. Even if it was just the police officers walking into the area similar to this shot here, I think having that would help solidify the idea that he is actually rescued and he's not just hallucinating something approaching him. Because the way it is right now, there is sort of the tiniest idea that maybe the Wendigo escaped, maybe he's just hallucinating. There's still a slight bit of open-endedness to this ending, even though it is implied that he survived. So I know it's very nitpicky of me to say, but I still wish that it was just a smidge longer and we got a little bit more information out of it. What I personally find interesting about this cutscene, though, is how difficult it is to actually get. The original information that I found when trying to get this ending is that you have to make sure that Josh is remorseful during his last conversation with Dr. Hill in Chapter 8. You have to make sure that Sam and Mike will then find Hannah's diary to prevent him from immediately getting killed, and then you have to make sure that every single other character survives in order to trigger this scene. But that didn't do it. That did not unlock the option for me to be remorseful. The next thing that I tried was to have Ashley make sure that she stabs Josh with the scissors back in Chapter 6, but that also did not get me the remorseful I'm sorry option to show up. I've tried to find more information on this online, but frankly, every single article that I find so far has just mentioned how you have to pick the remorseful option. That's their step one. No one seems to be talking about how to unlock that dialogue option. There's not even a butterfly effect option on the screen to give me a hint as to where I went wrong either. My current theory at the moment is that I'd have to make sure every single person that can hurt Josh does hurt Josh. So Sam with the bat if you unlock it, Ashley with the scissors, and Chris with the bat in the shed. But I haven't actually had a chance to test that out. I did also find this Reddit page stating that you have to answer the questions with Dr. Hill in a very specific way in order to get the dialogue option unlocked. And while that makes a lot more sense than my current theory, I again haven't had a chance to test it out, so if any of you know the key to unlock the dialogue option, make sure to leave a comment down below because I kind of want that trophy, but at the same time, I don't want to have to play through the entirety of the game again just to get a 2-minute cutscene. I also kind of find it hard to believe that we would have to answer every single one of Dr. Hill's questions in a certain way, rather than just making sure you answer maybe 2 or 3 major questions with a certain decision. So it's interesting stuff. Like I said, if you know, let me know down below. But as a whole, all of the additions and expansion to Josh's character and his story I think was really nicely done. I'd actually be very interested to see what kind of ending they give him if they do an actual sequel, which we will talk about more at the end of this video.
He said Wait,
Not
what?
right in front of us, man. Ashley, I'll get you out of this. I won't let you die.
I should have told you how I felt. You just got mugs.
Next up on the list is Chris. Now, the changes to Chris's story sadly fell a bit flat. His character, in my opinion, is the last remaining issue in this entire story. He is the last character to have a major sort of confusing issue, and if we're being honest, it's not that major, it's just major to me because, like I said in the very beginning, this game and its story was already near perfection. So it aggravates me that they didn't clarify this last remaining detail about Chris's character. What is it I'm talking about, you're wondering? Well, the question of did Chris know about the prank to Hannah or not? In the original game, Chris is seen knocked out at the table while the prank occurs, just slumped over across from Josh. But all of the dialogue that he has with Ashley as they go through the basement, finding all these clues related to the twins and this psycho, he talks about the prank in a very inclusive manner. He says a lot of, we did this, we did that, we didn't know. But from what we as players saw, he didn't do any of that. He was never participating in the prank at all. He didn't even know about it. In my video discussing the original game, a lot of you guys in the comment section mentioned how Chris, in the demo version of the game, was originally very involved in this prank. So it seems that despite all of the changes they made before its initial release, there was this sort of natural spilling over of the dialogue of Chris using this inclusive language to Ashley. There is also a different group of people that are saying that Chris is just trying to be nice to Ashley to make her feel better over her actions. So he will say we instead of you did that, since it's only the two of them and, you know, he does have a crush on her, so he doesn't want her to get too offended or mad. So it already aggravated me that they kept in almost all of this dialogue, but to make matters even worse, the idea of Chris maybe knowing about the prank before he passes out seems even less likely now in the new remake because of the additions to the intro. In the original, like I said, we just saw him slumped over. We didn't get much information at all. But now, we see that it's implied he was the first one to fall asleep at this party, hence gaining him the privilege of getting all the stupid drawings on his face from Emily, Jess, and Ashley. I find it really hard to believe that he would be included in this prank when he's already been passed out for presumably a while. Yes, it's still up for debate. Maybe he knew about the prank beforehand. Maybe he was just there to distract Josh. That is definitely an option. But I'm just really upset that despite all of the additions and changes to this intro scene, we didn't get any true clarification. It seems as if they are implying he knew nothing about the prank, which would then make that inclusive we that he uses in the dialogue later on even more frustrating and confusing and conflicting to the scene they are providing here. I guess at this point, with the information we've been given, I'm definitely leaning more into the side that he was trying to just be nice to Ashley, but I'm still just a smidge upset that this last little confusing detail to any of the characters really was not fixed. And again, it's nitpicky, I know, but this game is so close to perfection. This is like the last issue with any of the characters, so I feel like I had to just bring it up, because to me, that's the last major issue.
Hold on! I'm such an idiot. I'm so dumb. You jerks!
Speaking of this intro scene, I think all of the additions that we got to the twins was nicely done, but I will admit, I once again, sadly, had high expectations going into this game, and I definitely just assumed that we would be getting a lot more of the original cast to come back and film more scenes, whereas the reality is, it was only Hayden Panettiere, which we love her, she's great, I'm so happy she came back, but I wish that the other cast members were able to come back as well, whereas everyone else, they had to pull footage and dialogue options from the vault from the first round of filming back in 2013. So I definitely, sadly, had high expectations going into this intro, and it wasn't a whole lot. I mean, it was nice to see Beth being responsible, she's taking care of her brother, you have this sweet moment of her and Hannah sort of tucking him in, We get to see the sisters cleaning up, and we also get a good glimpse at how emotional and childishly naive Hannah actually is. So the additions they made, it does work really well. And I think I just have a little bit of a reoccurring problem where I go into these games expecting them to be absolutely amazing because I'm just so excited about them, and then I just wind up being a little bit disappointed with the end result. I also think that the expansion on Hannah as this sort of overly emotional character was nicely portrayed in her diary that we find as Ashley. She talks of how she is excited that Josh is back home, and she mentions how she didn't actually know that he had been in therapy for years. And then, the key line, that she needs a good cry about it. Now I know it's a very, very brief line, and some people might miss it in their first playthrough, but I think that it adds a really nice touch as to how emotional and impulsive Hannah actually is, which is obviously showcased further back in the introduction scene, with her getting all dolled up for Mike, and then running outside after everything went down. So I felt it was a nice little addition to solidify Hannah's character. With this remake, as I mentioned earlier, we do get an additional totem pole that features Hannah's transition from human into a Wendigo. We start to see in these totems just how her vision changed and transformed while she's crawling down in the mines. We will then get to see how Hannah learned to hunt as we watch these visions through her own eyes while she chases after a deer before eventually we see another totem of her grabbing and dragging Jessica, which occurs earlier in this game. As a whole, I really loved this additional totem pole. It caught me off guard in the beginning when I first saw the butterfly effect sign when we played as Sam, because for a split second I thought that I had forgotten about a different color for the butterfly effect totems. But to my greatest surprise, it was a brand new section of totems and visions. I also think that with this brand new totem pole, a lot of first-time players will be able to grasp the full events of the mountain this evening a lot easier. I think when you first play through the game, it can be a bit confusing to figure out which Wendigo was where, who is actually who, so the fact that we get confirmation that it was Hannah dragging away Jessica earlier in the game, I think that's just a really nice touch, and overall, I loved this addition.
Stop yelling at me and let me work this out!
Give me a break! Understand the palm of my hand, bitch.
Mike, Emily, Matt, and Jess's characters have basically remained the same from the original. There's really no changes to any of these characters, and while there's a part of me that hoped we could maybe get a few more additions to Matt and Jess, since they are the characters that we spend the least amount of time with out of the whole group, we really only got this additional scene with Matt and Emily. Now, the reality is, it's not actually a new scene. This interaction between the two characters was available in the original game, but only for people that had pre-ordered it. So a lot of people didn't know this scene existed, but sadly for me, and I'm sure many others of you out there who have watched and loved these games for years, it's not new per se. That being said, the scene is really nice since we actually get to spend time with Matt and Emily, and we get to see their true relationship dynamic. We even see Emily actually being apologetic. Like, what?
Thanks for helping me find my bag. I know I can be a little high maintenance.
So I am really glad that they put this scene into the actual remake. But as a whole, all four of these characters do remain unchanged. They all have their iconic lines, and I'm happy to revisit these characters in this beloved story, in which I still personally find Emily to be the best one. I just love the drama, okay? And can we also just talk about this moment here, how Matt has the most impeccable timing for this conversation? I mean, I love the drama. It's so cheesy, it's so corny. I love to see it.
Christ, Matt, we were just talking. Oh my god, this is not the time!
Just tell me what's going on!
Nothing, Matt! God!
Just admit it!
I was confused.
So you fucked him!
The one other tiny little addition that I did find myself wanting, however, I wanted Mike to be tossed into a jail cell at the end of the game if he is the sole survivor and if he shot Emily. I think the addition of a sort of ending cutscene with just Mike getting thrown into a cell would be really interesting, and I think it would have been just the perfect sort of secret ending to this game. Out of all the characters in this story, Mike has a crucial role in it, so I think it would have been really cool for him to have his own secret ending as well. However, that's just me being a little nitpicky and wanting the sort of cherry on top to this game.
What are you doing out there? You know, I kind of think you're the last person she wants to see right now, Mike.
Dirty love. Please, no!
And then last but certainly not least, we have Sam. I have a lot of thoughts, and I know not everyone's gonna agree with me, but let's dive in. Sam remains the same in the remake as she does in the original, with the only difference to her entire character being the additional scene at the end of the game. The only requirement for this additional scene is that she needs to survive the events of the evening. Now, in this scene, we see Sam is struggling to cope with the events that unfolded. She's on medicine, she's hearing voices, she may not be taking her meds, and she is just in general struggling mentally, and understandably so, but she then stares at this mysterious wound on her arm that seems to have suddenly just appeared as the room glows red before she hears Josh's voice, turns around, and we cut to black.
Sam.
If this isn't sequel baiting, then I don't know what is. The behind-the-scenes interview with Hayden seems to very much imply that they are trying to push for a sequel focused on Sam's character, and I'll be honest, that concerns me just a little bit. Now, it is possible that Sam could make an appearance in another game. I think a lot of fans have been speculating that she could make an appearance in the world of Dead by Daylight because of the red glowing being reminiscent of the entity finding and choosing a victim. But with the idea of them being in the works of making a sequel that is focused on Sam, I really am not the biggest fan of that. Now, the idea of a sequel in general is something that I've always gone back and forth on in my mind, because I do think there's some interesting aspects that the story could go and could be fun to expand on. Mainly I'm thinking diving into the lore of the Wendigos or the Curse of the Mountain. A lot of people feel like Mike might dive into the sort of Wendigo fighting. And just in general, the idea that the group could potentially become supernatural monster hunters is definitely up for grabs. There's a lot of different avenues this story could kind of go, but I always find myself coming back to the idea in question of how would they do that without ruining this game? Because as I've said so many times, the pacing and the events of the original story is just perfection. So why take the risk of ruining the game's reputation? The issue that I have with them following Sam's character is, for starters, the fact that she is not necessarily the most traumatized character. Now, I know obviously mental health can affect different people in real life differently. However, in terms of storytelling, I find myself being a lot more drawn to someone like Chris or Mike or Emily. Maybe it's the fact that Sam missed out on the first half of the evening's events because she was taking a bath, but someone like Chris has been through so much more than Sam did in the game. And while Sam does her job really well as the sort of final girl character, she's the morally good character and she suits the role well, and the game works so well with her character coming into the rescue at the end, I just still don't think she's the right character to choose if they do decide to do a solo sequel of this series. Now, that being said, if they do decide to have Sam as our main character and the solo character for a sequel, I think then it really comes down to what ending they end up going with. The initial setup for the sequel relies so heavily on who survives this night that we as players get to decide throughout our gameplay. And I personally think majority of our other characters would have to be killed off in this ending in order for Sam to work best as our main character in a solo sequel. And that pains me to say because I really would love to see how all the other characters got on when they survived. Characters like Mike and Chris and Emily, the ones that went through what I personally feel like is the most intense parts of this game. And the fact that I know most of them would probably have to be killed in order for Sam's story to work the best, is really upsetting to say. But the reality is, Sam's personality just gets very overpowered by some of these other characters, like Emily and Mike in particular. For some reason, Sam just becomes so timid around these two dominating characters. The prime example of this has to be the scene where Mike ends up shooting Emily, because Sam just doesn't really try to stop him. Sam becomes more of a background character in this scene, just like how she becomes a bit more of a background character in the introduction when the prank actually occurs. Sam, for some reason, can't resist or push back against Emily, and while they could maybe explore that dynamic and friendship in the sequel if they wanted to, I think ultimately the easiest solution to make sure that Sam is the main character instead of Emily or Mike would be to sadly have them get killed off. If they don't make the sequel a solo story for Sam, I do think there's a strong possibility that it could focus on both Mike and Sam and potentially Josh, as if those three were the only survivors, or at the very least keep close attention to Mike and Sam because they are our sort of final girl and final guy character in the overarching story of the game. However, everything about this sequel is all speculation and everything is still very much up in the air. Nothing is set in stone, so let me know your thoughts and theories down below about where they could go with a potential sequel. While the sequel has not yet been confirmed, what is set in stone though is the fact that the Until Dawn movie is set to be released in April 2025. From what I found online, the main cast of characters is going to be different from the characters in the game, yet the overarching story is going to be pretty similar to that of the video game. I don't really have too much other information about the film at this time, so I guess we just have to wait until the trailer is eventually released before we make any hard and fast judgments about this film. Do I have the highest hopes? Not really, but I'm holding out just a tiny sliver of hope that maybe it will actually turn out good. All in all though, with the release of this film and the potential for a sequel, I'm really hoping that these adaptations of this beloved game don't go on to tarnish the reputation that is the original Until Dawn. So to sum things up and answer the questions that I posed to you in the beginning of the game, was the remake good and was it worth it? Kind of. In relation to the overall story, I do think that the changes made were, for the most part, really good changes. Were they necessary changes? No, but I do think the areas that they expanded upon were nicely done. We also have the amazing improvements that we saw with the graphics, and I also forgot to mention earlier on, the game is a lot more gory, so if you like to see a lot more gore in your horror games, then this is definitely a step up from the original. But with that said, in terms of the overall game's worth, when you look at the sort of tech issues that many people have had with this release, when you consider the poorly done music, that does not add to the overall tension and cheesiness that this game's story has to offer, and when you look at just how short the additional scenes are without creating some sort of drastic change to the overall story, I just don't feel like this game is worth the $60. While the changes are good, they just don't add a crazy amount of new elements to this entire remake. So that being said, if you are someone who loves to play your favorite games and favorite stories with the most updated graphics possible, then definitely get it, because I do think the graphics are a huge improvement from before. However, if you are going into this remake like I was in hopes that there would be a lot more changes to the overall plot and storyline, then I'd strongly recommend not getting it, because I don't feel like it's worth playing through the entire game 1 or 2 more times just to get about 3 more minutes of extra scenes. And once again, I really did not like the music, so for most people, if you are somewhat interested in getting it, I would just recommend waiting until it goes on sale so that at least you get to save a little bit of your money, and the cost is a little bit more equal to the actual worth of the game, in my opinion. That being said, I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen to this beloved game with the movie coming out and the potential for a second sequel. I will definitely be keeping my eye on things, and I will also just be keeping my eye on Supermassive in general, as we have the second season of the Dark Pictures anthology coming out in the beginning half of 2025 with the release of Directive 8020. With that, if you guys like my discussion, please remember to hit that like button down below and leave your thoughts in the comment section. If you guys made it this far into the video, let me know by leaving a little music note emoji down in the comments, while also telling me what you think about the potential for a sequel. What did you think about this remake? Was it worth it? Did you play it? Did you buy it? Did you have any sort of tech issues? Are you excited for the movie? Yes, no, maybe so. Let me know down below. And while you're down there, make sure you click subscribe to see more videos from me, and turn on notifications if you want to be notified whenever I post a new video. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you future souls next time. Bye, guys!